Hello everyone and welcome to the next session of Core Java. In continuation with the discussion of exception handling, we will discuss about the exception hierarchy in Java. In previous session, we discussed about the basics of exception, like what is exception, why exception occurs, and what happens when an exception has occurred. Then we also discussed about why do we need to handle the exception. But then what are exceptions in Java? This is what one point we need to understand over here. So basically in Java, all exceptions and error types are nothing but classes. There is a hierarchy where a class named as throwable class is the base class of the hierarchy. Further, this throwable class has got two main subclasses, we can say. One is exception, another is error. Exception is nothing but a condition that occurs at runtime. This is what we have already seen. What is an error then? Error is also a condition which occurs at runtime. Then why there is bifurcation or separation of error and exception? So that means what is the difference between an error and an exception? So the main difference is exception can be handled programmatically. However, errors cannot be handled programmatically. Like say for example, null pointer exception is one example of an exception which occurs at runtime. However, the developer can implement a code so that this particular exception can be handled at runtime. However, there can be certain errors which will happen at runtime, like system error or compilation error or stack overflow error. These errors cannot be handled programmatically. Once the error has occurred, obviously the program will get terminated and you will have to make the changes in the logic, right? The code, which obviously has got that error to occur. So you need to modify that particular code and make conditions such as no error has occurred at runtime. But I cannot write the code like I can write for exception handling, for error handling. Now, what is the hierarchy? As I have already mentioned, there are certain classes, predefined classes. So the hierarchy starts from the object class. There is another class named as throwable. Throwable class is the base class of the exception hierarchy. Well, now what is difference in object class and throwable? Object of object must be created. Object of throwable can be thrown at runtime. Means someone else will create that object for us whenever that object needs to be or that exception needs to be raised. This throwable is further divided into two parts as errors and exceptions, which we have already discussed. Errors cannot be handled programmatically, however, exceptions can be. Now, there are certain classes which directly are extended from exception class, and there is another class named as runtime exception, which is subclass of exception, and there is further hierarchy of runtime exception class. So this is basically hierarchy of classes which is available in Java for exceptions. So this is it in this particular session. Thank you.